Welcome back to Prince William Public Libraries. I am the host here for this particular video segment, William Galaini, and today we will be discussing researching and writing and presenting a diverse cast of characters. And to put it simply, it's basically we will talk about people who aren't anything like you. So as a writer, this is how to write people that are very different from yourself and to still capture their truth, capture their essence, and to be respectful. Now I'm going to open this up with something a little bit different than the other videos I've done for Prince William Public Libraries, in that I'm going to speak from my personal experience. So when I started writing this first novel back in 2009 of mine, called The Line, the protagonist was a woman about 15 years older than me and far smarter than I ever could be, and she had clinical sociopathy. And I wanted to make sure that as the protagonist of this book, I wanted to represent that as accurately and respectfully as possible. And oftentimes when we hear the term, sociopathy, we immediately go to Hannibal Lecter or whatever, you know, sorry, my cat's climbing all over me. Law and Order winds up stating. So that is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a realistic character. So first off, I began to know people who were diagnosed through Reddit and other forums who had sociopathy through these anonymous online support groups and asked them just general questions. I learned that about the disconnection with emotion that accompanies it, how they become very good, surgeons, very good conflict mediators because they don't feel necessarily drawn in through empathy to one side or the other. They are vital people to make the world go round. And so that really refined my perspective of that. The other challenge I had was to make sure I was representing a woman who was older than me more accurately than I would casually perceive. So with that, I just interviewed a lot of the women I worked with as a teacher who were older than me and told me what they wanted in characters that represented them and their demographic. And since all these teachers were almost invariably smarter than me, I got a 2-for-1 deal. Older, more intelligent woman. So in the end, how I addressed this issue of having a protagonist who is very different from myself as the author was I sought out people like the protagonist that I wanted to write, and I got to know them. I asked them very open questions. Hey, I'm a writer. I'm thinking of writing a certain type of character. Can I ask you some questions? And everyone was down for that. The most important skill, and this is the thing you'll hear over and over again throughout this video, by far the most important skill when it comes to writing characters that aren't like you is just to listen. And to that end, I wanted to write the first book in one of my 5-part series. The main character of the first book was to be Hephaestion, Alexander the Great's gay lover. So I needed to understand what it was, especially in ancient Greek society, to be in an open gay relationship. So I checked with historians, and then I made sure whatever I wrote, I gave to my gay friends and acquaintances to read over it. We call it a sensitivity reading, uh, but it's just best practice. I do not want someone to read something of mine and say, oh, this is a gay man as a straight man wrote him. No, I did not want that to be obvious or discernible whatsoever. I wanted to have an accurate representation of the character. And in the end, it was very easy because there was no major difference. People are people. And you will discover that in many aspects. We cannot take it for granted, but you will discover that in many aspects, people are just people. And unless the story is about him being gay, which it was not, then it will not be a difficult thing to take into account for as a writer and be mindful of. Being mindful is an incredibly important skill when writing characters who are not you. Another vital skill is how to maximize the use of your resources. Prince William Public Libraries has a ton of online, digital, and virtual resources you can use. All kinds of academic references. As you can see, there's Hoopla Digital. Find documentaries on the type of person or the topic you're looking to research, and then enjoy that documentary. I will say, as an aside, I will warn you away from bad sources. So do not go for sources that are supported either by special interest groups, like religious institutions typically. Do not go to YouTube where any crazy person in the basement can yell about the evil of walnuts or whatever, and then suddenly that becomes an influencing element of your narrative. Stick with library curated sources. I would strongly also recommend NPR or PBS. There are a lot of great documentaries through those sources as well. For instance, if you're writing a Civil War book, well, then go find Ken Burns' Civil War documentary. You must do the work. Now, while that talks about setting and such, you will get strong looks at individual people within those conflicts and their values and their exposures. And you'll be able to carry that over to your characterization. And here we have the most popular photograph in the world, Earth, and the photograph specifically taken from Apollo 17. And now that you've gone through the research and the reading and the documentary viewing, etc. phase, now it's time for you to go out into the actual world and seek out the people you wish to write. So it's very important that while you're going out entering communities that you might be a stranger, that you kindly and politely announce your intentions. If they are not interested in sharing any stories with you or their experience with you, you will step away. You will not push, because you must be respectful. The more you intrude upon an exterior world, the more you alter it. Additionally, don't be this guy. You do not have to hang out in the bushes, dangle, whatever, sit in the mall and just leer as people walk by. You must respectfully engage. Once a population or people know that you are visiting there with the intentions of writing a character in that setting, people will open up. You will probably get a guarded best foot forward, but that's why you don't just listen to one person, you listen to many. You listen to people of both genders. As an example, this is the Gurudwara in Fairfax. And this institution, these people here, I wanted to write a science fiction character with a Sikh protagonist. And so I visited. Knocked on the door, talked to people. I called first, of course. Asked a multitude of individuals who were there, including their person who's sort of their public relations individual, and just asked, tell me about your people. How do you feel people of the Sikh religion are represented in fiction, let alone science fiction? What would you like to see in such characters? What parts of your religion frustrate you? What parts of your culture have invaded your religion and altered your religion? Tell me about the guru. Tell me about Hesh. Tell me about everything you can. This was not a simple, quick process either. This involved many dinners, many seated on the carpet with everyone. I attended multiple religious services and found it wonderful and delightful. Basically, I became a fixture for a couple of weeks. Got to talk to the kids, talk to multiple generations of people, talk to, through translation, talk to people who did not speak English. And I learned a tremendous amount. It is not nearly as immersive as me actually having been, Sikh, etc. I am not writing as his own voice. I am very much a very typical, overrepresented white heterosexual male. But it's still just a start, a primer to just address writing a character who isn't me, which means I have to be around people who are not me. They were welcoming. It was a great experience, and I'm not going to lie, the food is amazing. And this will continue to persist as you attend all kinds of different services. If your characters are religious, as many individuals on Earth are, either the product of their religious culture or they themselves are faithful. If you're Lutheran, go to a Catholic church if you're writing a Catholic character. Do not presume. Do not base your perception of a demographic upon your prior knowledge, because your prior knowledge is warped until you go and have firsthand experience. A fine example of this is in, funny enough, this book, Moby Dick. And while people who have archaeological or anthropological backgrounds would understand, I first encountered the concept that once you observe something, you alter it from Moby Dick. Essentially, Ishmael takes people's word for what whales look like because other people have to tell him. And whales, of course, behave differently once you are in the water with them, so their perceptions of how whales behave is different. But almost everyone in the book Moby Dick, since diving is not a thing really, their perceptions of whales are what they look like when they wash up on the beach, where they oscillate skeletally within the huge chunks of blubber as they're rotting, etc. Very few people have been with a whale while it was alive within this book. And so everyone's perception of whales is wrong. Same thing. If you are going to base your perception off of Catholic individuals just from what you absorb passively through media, especially considering you're probably in a media bubble, the way algorithms work, then you're going to have a wrong perception of Catholicism. Same goes for Sikh, same goes for Muslims, same goes for atheists. You must saturate yourself in the culture of people. And this, of course, includes people of various ages. Now, it is very easy for someone who is older to write of someone younger because we have personal experiences from which to pull. But don't be limited to people of your age or younger when you're writing. Pull from your relationships with people who are older than you. I strongly recommend going to retirement homes because just there's so much you can get just from sitting there and talking with individuals, learning from them about their life experiences, what things were like way back when, quotation marks. And so now that we've considered age and religion, obviously, we also need to consider things like body type. It might seem simple, but not only having a certain physique molds how the character interacts with the world around them and how the world interacts back, but it also determines in some ways our mentality. A person who grows up with a certain body type in a certain society will have an attitude that accounts for that. So feel free. No, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. You must represent a multitude of physicality within your work. Especially with narrative design and, say, video games, it might be more difficult in that a company will try and make one body type fits all. And while that might work for, say, a game where you're fighting clones or you're interacting with each other as robots or something of that nature, for something more diverse, open world with a populace that is varied, it just doesn't work. You need to have a lot more body representation. And you need to do the same for anything you write. And once again, it is just as easy as finding people of diverse religions or people of diverse mentalities or ages. You need only look out your window. And if you look out a window and see everyone looking the same, you are looking out the wrong window. You can easily encounter people of many different physiques all over. And again, without being the creepy guy in the tree with binoculars, you can merely observe from a distance how they move, how they feel, what they've done to earn that body or what they've done to struggle with that body. Oftentimes both. You will also find that not only is the body itself an important facet of the character, but how the character either molds, changes, alters, or redefines their body. Transsexuality is now far more accepted than it has been in the past, and you are going to find a number of, this book in particular is one that strikes me, of accounts of how that journey is taken. A number of very prevalent artists and film directors have also come out recently as trans. The Wachowskis who did the Matrix trilogy, the first Matrix film in a lot of ways is a trans allegory. Elliot Page was once known as Ellen Page. So characters who go through this are also an important representation, also require valid and important representation. But also keep in mind not to make the entire narrative about that facet of a person. I mean, someone who is a transsexual can still be an alcoholic. You know, they can still be a kleptomaniac. They can still be anxious or terrified. They can still be bold and brave and heroic. These are just merely aspects of what defines the whole of their character. Do not reduce a character to a mere trait, like, oh, that's the trans character, TM. That's lazy writing. It's bad writing. You're not representing a character, you're making a stock image of a person. You're doing the bare minimum to claim representation or diverse casts of characters. You really need them to be people. And again, that means you're going to go out and you're going to meet people who are transsexual. You're going to meet people and interact with people who don't fall into the gender normatives from which you might be accustomed. That is your job. And the last major aspect I'll talk about in regards to creating characters who are unlike you is essentially disability, be it either through issues from birth or issues from life happening. Even if you yourself might have a certain disability, be it anything as simple as color blindness to anything as complex as, cerebral palsy, uh, other disabilities are still radically different from the ones that you specifically have. So if you're going to write characters who are going to have these different, be they neurodiverse, be they disabled, etc., you, again, must saturate yourself in their culture. So first research, read, and then respectfully approach. Truth is, most people, and if they happen to have caregivers, want their story to be heard and would love to see themselves in your literary production. It's highly unlikely that someone will take offense to saying, "Hey, I'd like to ask you a few questions. I want to write a character with a similar ailment to what you have." But if they do, if they are upset, if you approach them wrong, or if they're just uninterested, clearly give them their distance. There are many people in this world that you can easily approach as well. But also make sure that you yourself as a writer do not reduce the person down to the disability. Do not make the character's disability a major plot device or plot point. Make sure that character with the disability makes choices. Make sure they steer the plot as much as any other periphery character or main character. Make sure they are an individual with wants, needs, hopes, fears that are tangible and untethered and unrelated to the disability, even though the disability itself is always present. It's a difficult thing to do, which is luckily for you why you're a good, conscientious, can't pronounce it, narrative designer. Because you are good at your job, you will bring people into the characters you write, and people will see their reflections accurately in them. So to review, here are a number of books and films that I would suggest you at least explore to just get a feel of different cultures as just the very first dipping in the water of your toe kind of thing. So first off, I would suggest if you want a book with the hero being just 100% regular guy, The Postman. I thought The Postman was a great work of science fiction, and the protagonist is just a man. There's nothing special or significant about him. He just winds up working his way into a position of accountability and responsibility for those around him. That's basically it. But a wonderful book. He's vulnerable. He's outgunned. He suffers just like anyone else does. He makes mistakes. Very good, simple, regular human. Freak the Mighty is another great example. I used to teach this when I taught middle school. It is an excellent book. Uh, these two characters become close friends. They've got substantial disabilities. One has a hyperactive adrenal gland and what seems to be a mild case of giantism. He's also severely dyslexic, and his other friend has issues to where he has growth irregularities. The two characters together wind up forming a strong bond and playing off of each other's strengths while not ignoring each other's weaknesses. Wonderful. Just a wonderful book. I strongly recommend it. It's wonderful first-person narration. It is a great exploration of disability and how it alters our social standing as well as our familial ones. This next one is both a book and a film. It deals with the misogynistic culture that this girl is rooted in and how she wishes to still be a part of that culture while reconciling its misogyny. Wonderful work. It's many people have seen this without having pursued the active narrative design, etc., or character exploration, but I strongly recommend it. Very good New Zealand film. You can probably get the film at your library. You can also find the book at your library. I know this might be a bit of a sin, but I actually found the film to be just as good as the book. It's wonderful. So here's another great character study of someone who could very much not be like you. And while there are a number of books that explore mental illness to a considerable degree, I think one of my favorites is The Stranger. The main character has some type of undiagnosed dissociative disorder, and he evaluates everything from a very disconnected, dispassionate, nihilistic approach. And it's reflected in the plot and the structure of the book itself. It's an easy read, but a difficult comprehension, if that means anything. Not pleasant. No one says, "Oh, The Stranger, love it, bedside every night." No. But it is a very good examination of the darker side of being disconnected from the world around you through mental illness. You also can find a number of books and articles, especially on Jstor, which is available through the library, or other sources that detail people's experience sexually in their community. This was a book that was recommended to me when I was working in a detention center about the challenges that young gay black men and young gay black women face, especially in smaller, more insular black communities. It was very eye-opening for me. It's a very academic book. It should be available at your library. It is wonderful. It is a difficult, dense, challenging read, but also it approaches everything from a very studious perspective. Wonderful. I learned a lot from this book. It is also important to have characters that are outside of your personal socioeconomic sphere. The Other Westmore is a parable, almost an accidental observation of two characters with the same, two people, I'm sorry, they're real life people, of the same name with different parentage and different opportunities. And this book explores how much they were both impacted by this. This is not a data-driven book. Again, it is merely a singular example that the cosmos presented the writer. But it is very important because it takes a close, intimate look at how two men with so much similar can deviate given the opportunities that chance provides. Now, this will be the last book I'll recommend before I start recommending music. Now, this book particularly is based upon Beowulf, the incredibly famous epic tale of blood, guts, and bravery. But it's told entirely from the perspective of the antagonist, the adversary of Beowulf, the creature known as Grendel. This is how we write a character that is painted through other media radically different. Last Temptation of Christ also did it with Judas, but I think the finest example, the most isolated, insular example of this would be John Gardner's Grendel. So if you want to know what it's like to be the bad guy, to be hated, but from that sympathetic character point of view, this is great. It will help you sharpen up your antagonist because you need motivation and sympathy for your bad guy. Your bad guy has to be the hero of their narrative. And Grendel is a pristine example of this. It's also available at the library. So as I was just previously saying, music is vital for me when writing and producing narrative. I always have it on in the background, or at least I listen to it prior to constructing the narrative, because if we want to learn about a people, we definitely need to listen to their music. To learn much about aspects of faith or the type of music that compels others or what kind of music your character might be engaged with, then we need to seek out music from their culture or what we think they might enjoy. You will easily be able to find a multitude of choir performances and public domain music in those databases I linked earlier in this video, or at least just showed a picture of earlier in this video. You can also check out and rent many CDs from the library. there's tons of good stuff that I have checked out to help me with my writing. Even things that are a bit more modern, such as rock and roll. Maybe you have a character who likes Jethro Tall. So Jethro Tall here, just doing amazing things with the flute. You can easily find that as well. Get an idea of the headspace of your character. Maybe your character's a flutist. Maybe your character loves rock and roll from the 60s and 70s. Maybe your character was a roadie on a show, and this is what they dedicated their lives to. Submerge yourself into the things your character liked, and music is probably one of the easiest and certainly the least expensive ways to do this. I could also say you could try and immerse yourself into a character by dining as they do, eating as they do, but there can be a lot of complications from that. Changing your diet entirely can be a difficult thing on the body. It's also expensive, etc. If you at least get the music, exposed to the music, that will definitely help. So, in short, big or small, the library has it all. Whatever library is closest to you will have access to the entire network of library resources. Uh, any state you travel to, any county you travel to, walk into a library. They will help you. This is one of the most vital aspects of America's infrastructure is our library system. So please take advantage of it. You can find my work there as well. You can find the music available to you to explore cultures. You can find connections to particular groups of people, be they help groups or just outreach programs to get to know and meet individuals who are nothing like you. All of that can be found in spades at the library, so please take advantage of it.